Hey guys, it's Davin here at brewbits.com. Behind the camera as usual we've got James. Say hello James. Today then I thought I would brew up something I read about quite a lot in the forums, which is chocolate wine. Now chocolate wine is made with dark cocoa powder, and I don't really like dark chocolate, I like milk chocolate. So I thought we would brew up a milk chocolate wine. And the way we're going to do that is by using this creamy white powder here, which is lactose, and that comes from milk, and that's going to add a lovely creaminess and turn our chocolate wine into milk chocolate wine. So we're going to need a few other bits and bobs. Over here I've got an orange, I've got some vanilla extract, I've obviously got the hot chocolate powder, I've got some sugar, I've got the lactose. In this box here I've got a load of sultanas, and I'll show you what we'll be doing with those in a moment. What else have we got? So we've got our yeast, and here I'm using Mangrove Jack's VR21, as well as some extra malic acid, some fermentation stopper, some Camden tablets, some pectolase, nutrient, and some finings. Okay, we're then going to need a few bits and bobs, so bear with me. We need to juice and zest our orange. We need a spoon for stirring everything, a little funnel. We need our siphon. Over here I've got a thermometer, hydrometer, and that's all sitting nice and comfortably in my trial jar. Over here then, I've got a big glass bowl, some cling film, and a potato masher. No, we're not making a mashed potato. Then we've got our demijohn, a bottle with some corks, a corker. We need something to ferment it all in, so we've got a fermentation bucket, and over here we've got our saucepan. Okay, so once we've got it all ready, we can get brewing. So as you see, I've cleared everything away, because 24 hours before you're going to start your brewing, you need to take your sultanas and you need to pop them in a bowl. And I've got 250 grams of sultanas here. And we need to turn these into raisin juice. And the way we do that is we put the kettle on for a pint of boiling water. These go into a bigger bowl. And on goes the pint of water, because these are going to soak up all this water overnight, and they're going to swell right up. So what we now need to do is find the end of our cling film, which is here somewhere. Hey, there we go. Almost. Why does cling film do this? It's great at sticking to a shelf, isn't it? Anyway, there we go. And over the top it goes. And just leave that somewhere now for 24 hours. I've weighed out 175 grams of my chocolate powder, cocoa powder, and I'm now going to pop that in a biggish saucepan. And it's very powdery at the moment, so I'm just going to add a little bit of cold water. And you're going to need to do this to make it into a paste, and you need to just add a little bit of water at a time. When you think you need to add a bit more water in, it will gradually start to turn into a paste. So once you think you're about there, adding a little bit of water at a time, making sure you've squished out any lumps that you see, you should end up with a paste that just about drops and holds its shape. And over here, I've pre-boiled my kettle because we want 2 pints of boiling water. Where's my 2 pint mark? There it is. And we're going to slowly add a little bit at a time, working it in so you don't splash yourself. Now it's all mixed in, I've put it onto the hob, and I'm going to gently bring it up to the boil. As soon as it starts foaming up, turn off the heat and bring it off the heat. Keep stirring it so it doesn't stick to the bottom of the pan. Right, now over here, James, I've already measured out 1.15 kilos of sugar, and into my brewing bucket that goes. And I'm going to very carefully now pour on, second pair of hands, very, very useful at this point, a hot chocolate liquid. There we go, make sure we get it all out. There we go. And now we're going to stir it so that we dissolve all the sugar into the hot chocolate. So now I'm going to simply take my orange, and like all good chefs do, they tell you to roll your orange, don't they? Now before I cut it in half and juice it, we're going to want to take the zest off. So I've got this lovely little machine here, a little file, like a little rasp I suppose. And all we're trying to do is just take the orange coating off our orange. You don't want any of the white pith, because that is quite bitter. We're just going to literally pop that in there as well. So that is my orange zested. Now, if you don't want it extremely orangey, then just only half zest of the orange, or because I like my chocolate. I love an orange chocolate. I love a terrace chocolate orange or something like that. So I like good orange chocolate. But as I say, if you don't like it orangey, you can either leave the whole orange out or only use part of it. That's the juice of 1/2. And the juice of 2. Easy as that. And give it a good stir in. So now back to the raisin juice. And we're just literally going to pour this in. Got a bit splashy. Get it all out of the bowl. Now, give that a stir in. Now I'm at risk of losing my red spatula, so I'm now going to move to my long white spoon. Give that all a lovely good stir in. Okay, so now we need to back to our jug, because we need to add 6 pints of cold tap water. So that's the 6 pints of cold water added, so we need to give it a good stir. Come on in, James, have a look at this, because it's looking absolutely delicious. Like you just want to pop it in a glass right now. A couple of ice cubes and just, sit down on a lovely hot summer's day and drink it. But that's not what we're doing. So, next thing, we need to take a temperature check to see what it's at, and hopefully it's going to be ready for us to add the next few bits. We're looking for a temperature between 18 and 22 degrees C. But mine's coming out a little bit more than that. Mine's coming out about 31 at the moment, so it's a little bit warm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop the lid on and leave it. Whoa, where's the lid? Over here. I'm going to pop the lid on and I'll leave it now to cool for a couple of hours, so it gets down to between 18 and 22 degrees. It's taken about an hour and it's cooled down lovely, so it's now 22 degrees. So we're ready to add a couple of other bits and bobs. So here I've got some yeast nutrient, 2 seconds, James, because this is going to help the yeast in there to do all their hard work. Just like me and you need vitamins, sometimes it clumps up a bit, just like me and you need vitamins, yeast need them too. And so giving them a spoonful of yeast nutrient really does help the fermentation process. That's part one. Alright, so we're also going to use some pectolase, because we've used the sultanas and we used boiling water on them. The pectin in the sultanas, grapes, could quite easily start to affect the wine and leave a haze in the finished wine. Now, I know it looks very brown and murky at the moment, but I'm expecting this to clear quite nicely. Now, the other thing we're going to add is something called tartaric acid, and this is going to give our wine a little bit of bites, because there's not much in the way of acid in cocoa powder. Although we've added our orange, which is our citric acid, the tartaric acid is going to add a tiny little bit of extra life and zing to it. Okay, so now we stir all this in. Just needs a quick little stir. Now it's ready for the yeast. But before I add the yeast in, over here, here's what I prepared earlier. I took a sample just before we added all of these, and it's coming out at 1.086. So note that down and keep that ready for when we're finished, and then we can do a good calculation of what the percentage of the final wine is going to be. So the yeast I'm using here is VR21 by Mangrove Jacks. That creates a really, really fruity and helps keep all the lovely aromas from the chocolate. Okay, so all we're going to do, take the spoon out because I don't need that now, just literally going to sprinkle this on top, like so. Now, this does have some nutrient in it as well, but I like to give it that extra hit with the yeast nutrient. So all we're going to do now is pop the top on in a couple of places. If you're using a top with an airlock, make sure your airlock's got a little bit of water or sterilising solution in it. This now goes into my warm place at 18 to 22 degrees C, and it's going to sit there for about 7 to 10 days. In a couple of days though, what I want you to do is have a quick look inside. If you've noticed that everything's floated to the top, with a sterilised spoon, just give it a quick stir and a quick knock back down in. Sometimes, depending on the cocoa powder you've used, can actually float to the top if you haven't really mixed it in very well. So, as I said, back into my warm place, 18 to 22 degrees for 7 to 10 days. Oh, look at the crust on the top of that. So it's, as I said, it's all foamed up, it's all puffed up. So we need to knock this back down in. Gently do it. It's got all the cocoa powder and bits of raisin and bits of orange all floating around at the top, so we just need to knock it back in, give it a gentle stir so that we can get all that flavour out of the cocoa powder. And then once we've knocked it back in, on goes the lid, pop it back down and do that again tomorrow. The chocolate wine's been sat in my warm place now for the last 10 days. And as you can see from the last time we looked at it, all that frothy stuff on the top has all dropped down and pretty much all the activity has stopped. But I can still see a few things happening in there. So down here, I've got my demijohn, and I've got my siphon, and on the end, I've got the sediment trap. So I've got a feeling down at the bottom of this bucket, it's going to be quite a lot of cocoa powder and broken up raisins. So into the top, come on in and just have a look a second, James, because I'm just going to go just below the surface, give it a good suck and get the wine flowing. I can tell you the aromas are amazing. Now I'm going to keep it just below the surface, and as the surface drops down, I'm going to follow it down with the siphon, and as we get closer and closer to the bottom, when there's less wine in here, I'm going to have to tilt the bucket up ever so slightly to make sure we can get all the wine out with as little possible as the sediment in the bottom. Ideally, I'd like to have got up to the neck of the demijohn. That's not quite happened with this. We've lost quite a lot to sediment. So what I've done is I've poured the sediment from the bucket into a jug, and that's pretty much 2 litres there. So what I'm going to do is pop some cling film over the top. Now put this in the fridge, and that sediment now is going to settle out and hopefully going to leave us some more wine on the top, which I can then siphon from there and use to top that up. There you go. Little handy tip if you find that your sediment has taken up a bit too much of the wine and not left you enough for your demijohn. So what do we do with our demijohn now? This is now going to go back into my warm place, 18 to 22 degrees, for another couple of weeks. You might think, why am I doing that? Because it's pretty much finished fermenting. It's highly unlikely more bubbles are going to come through the airlock, but there's still chemical processes going on. The yeast are still active in there, and they are still munching on other compounds, even though all the sugars might have been eaten up. So just trust me for now. This goes back into our warm place, 18 to 22 degrees C, for another 2 weeks. As you can see, the wine that we put into our jug, I then had enough to top up the top of the demijohn, and it's been sat in my warm cupboard now for the last 2 weeks, just finishing off, doing its own thing. So down here, I've got my sterilised hydrometer in a sterilised trial jar, and down here I've also got a sterilised siphon. So I'm just going to take a small sample a second, like so. I've got the end on, there we go. And this, we'll be very careful to lower some in here. And I'll probably need to do a bit more. Let's take that off so I don't do that again. Don't go that way. Oh my goodness, I had a sneaky taste then, and it is extremely chocolatey. There you go. Let's have our hydrometer floating. So yeah, it's coming out about 0.994. So great. Okay, that means we can move on. So the next thing we need to do is down here, I've got a second sterilised demijohn. So I'm going to siphon it into that so that we take it off the sediment. There's a very, very, very small amount of sediment down in the bottom there. And we're going to take it off of that. Again, using a simple siphon. Good suck. Get the pipe right down to the bottom of the second demijohn so you don't get splashing. And there you go. It takes a couple of moments to do the siphoning. There we go. In the wine at the moment, there's still plenty of live yeast, so we're going to use fermentation stopper. We're not going to use very much of it, only half a teaspoon in this whole gallon, and that's going to kill any remaining yeast. That's going to help us in the clearing process. So in that goes. That will dissolve in a second. The other thing we're going to add in is a Camden tablet, and the Camden tablet helps the fermentation stopper to work, but it also prevents any oxidization of the wine from the processes we're just about to do. You'll see what I mean in a moment. So crush that simply between 2 spoons and gently in that goes. Okay, I'm going to pop the lid back on. So, what you're going to need to do now is there's also in this wine a lot of carbon dioxide dissolved. And we also need to get the Camden tablets and the fermentation stopper fully incorporated. So, you can give a really good whoosh like this, and you can see the carbon dioxide coming out because it's actually being knocked out and it's pushing the air out through the bubbler. However, if you're going to do this process, you need to do this for about 5 minutes, and you need to do this 3 times a day for the next 48 hours, so quite a bit of effort. However, over here, I've pre-prepared my drill, and we've got something on here called a whiz stick, and this just goes down inside, and you just gently get it going. And as you can see, it whizzes the wine around, and then you stop it, and you go on reverse. And you do this for about 5 to 10 minutes, and you knock all the carbon dioxide out. Right, I think that is about it. It's been whizzing away now for quite a while. I'm not seeing a huge amount of bubbles come back out of it now. So, what do we do now? Well, for me, I can now add my findings. If you're using this swirly method, you're going to add this in a couple of days, because you can see it's quite hazy. There's obviously quite a lot of sediment in here still, and we want to try and clear this out. Now here I'm using a type of findings called Clear It, and in here we've got 2 bottles, a bottle A and bottle B. And we read on the instructions that for a gallon, for heavy sedimentation like we've got here, heavy cloudiness, you can need to use about 3 ml of each. So I've got my little sterilised syringe here, so in it goes, and I'm going to pull off 2 ml, and in my 2 ml goes, and I need to pull off 1 more ml. Oh, look at that smack on, and in that goes. Now I know it looks like we're not adding very much, but all this is going to do is this liquid is going to grab hold of all those little tiny particles that are floating around in there and make them all stick together, clump together, and start dropping into the bottom. So I'm going to give it a quick whiz a second to incorporate findings A. I'm going to put my airlock back on, and I'm now going to leave this for an hour before we come back to add findings B. An hour has passed since we added findings A, so it's now time to add B. And we're going to add 3 ml of this one as well. So here we go with my little syringe. 2. A bit too much. 3. And again, I can use my whizzy stick, but if you weren't going to use your whizzy stick, you just put it on like that. Just give it a good swirl around. But I'm going to use my whiz stick. In it goes. There you go, as quick and easy as that. So this now needs to go somewhere cool, where it's not going to be disturbed for the next week, really. And over the course of the next week, it may take 2, you'll see this start to clear beautifully. So come on in, James, and have a look at this, because this is really beautifully clear. Right, so down at the bottom you can also see there's some sediment where it's all settled down in. So what we now need to do is we need to get that wine off the sediment so we can move on. So down here I've got the jug, but more on that in a few seconds. And I've also got my siphon, and I've also got a sterilised demijohn. So the jug is here so that I can get myself ready for the next stage, because I need to siphon off, to start with, about 250 ml of wine into my jug. That's not very much. And then once it reaches there, we'll then pop the hose down into the other demijohn and let it flow. Lovely. And back to me a second, James. Because I know there will be loads of people out there, as you usually do, saying, why all this sterilisation when you then put your lips on the end of the tube and give it a suck? Well, now there's a load of alcohol in here. Any bacteria that would be from my mouth is going to be killed by that alcohol. The only bacteria that can actually affect this now is an acetobacteria, which would turn it to vinegar, and that's in the air all around us. So that's why we put the tube right down to the bottom of the second demijohn to stop any splashing, and that helps prevent the any acetobacteria actually getting into it and turning it to vinegar. So, but if you want to do it another way, you can get one of the auto siphons, give it a quick pump and get it flowing. It's up to you. There we go, it's about it. This is where we're now going to take our 250 ml of wine and into a saucepan on the hob. Just going to turn the heat on, and as it's warming up, we're going to gradually add our lactose. Now, what happens when you add lactose is it starts turning everything white and creamy, like so. And the reason is because lactose is a sugar that's derived from milk. And so it makes everything lovely and creamy, gently creamy, only subtly creamy, not over the top. And it's not over the top sweet either. It's about 5 times less sweet than normal sugar. And so this 400 grams is gradually going to dissolve into here. That's going to take a little bit of time, because we're going to gently heat it and stir as we're gently heating so it doesn't catch on the bottom. I know you can see some steam coming off here, but that's not steam, that's alcohol vapour, so don't breathe that in. We're not near the boiling point, anywhere near it yet. You'll notice it starts to thin and become less viscous as it gets hotter and hotter. Keep stirring it, keep it going. You can turn the heat right down. Turn the heat off even, so it doesn't boil over. Take it off the heat. And I've boiled it for about a minute, but this lactose that I'm using here is just not going perfectly clear. But that's cool. That's not a huge issue. But what we're going to do now is we're going to very, very gently pour it into our wine. And now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get the wine moving so that we can pour it in and start swirling it all in. There we go. And then we're just going to put back in, just give it a good swirl. Make sure all the lactose is combined in. And now the last thing we do is take our vanilla extract. And I say in the recipe to use 5 teaspoons, but that is totally up to you. It's all about putting it to taste. So if you don't like it too vanilla, use 3 teaspoons. If you like it more vanilla, use the full 5. And I like vanilla, so. How many was that? 3. 4. And the last one. 5. There we go. Pop the top back on. Ooh, where did I put the lid for the vanilla? Oh, it's over here. And we're going to give it a good swirl. Mix all that vanilla in. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to leave this now sat here for a couple of hours so that I can go off and I can sterilise all my bottles so I can get ready for bottling it. Awesome, right. Oh, I love vanilla. Not all of the lactose actually dissolves, you can see in my pan. Don't worry, a little bit of hot water and that'll all dissolve and be gone. And you can see now, it's gone lovely and clear, and there's still a bit more clearing to do. And a lot of the lactose has actually dropped out in the bottom. So what I'm going to do now, is I'm just going to take my demijohn from down here. I'll siphon just like I did earlier. I'm going to give it a quick rack. Just to take it off of the lactose that's dropped down to the bottom of this demijohn. Now I'm ready to bottle. In my saucepan on my hob, I've put a small amount of sodium metabolite sulfate solution. I'm going to whack the heat on and bring it up to the boil. And as soon as it boils, I'm going to turn it off the heat, drop my corks in, put the lid on, and leave it to steam for a minute. So whilst the sodium metabolite sulfate is coming up to boil, I've taken my simple siphon again. We no longer need the sediment trap because there's no sediment now left in the bottom of our demijohn. And on this end I've added our tap so that we can control the flow. And I've sterilised our bottles, and here I'm using green bottles. So in that goes, you can go all the way down to the bottom. Good suck. And now we can control the flow, send it down the inside edge of the bottle so you don't get your splashes, because as I was saying earlier, that's where you get your bacteria infections. So as it gets to about that point, so about 2 to 3 fingers from the top, because of course we need a bit of space to get our cork in, you're going to stop. And on to the next bottle. These are chilled out a bit, so straight into my corker. Onto a tea towel. There's one done. So this just sterilises the corks, make sure there's no horrible things on the cork. They're going to get into your wine. So the last bottle. There we go, it's done. As easy as that. So we've got 6 bottles of milk chocolate and orange wine. So back to me, St. James, because what we need to do now is we need to create a nice funky label to go on our bottle, and probably going to put a nice shrink cap on the top and leave it then lid down in a nice cool place for probably 3 months is going to be a good to allow all of this to start to come together and everything start to even itself out, because the lactose is really mellowed and taken the bitter edge off the chocolate. The orange is really, really subtle in there, and it's all just going to chill out and be quite nice. Pop it in the fridge in a couple of months' time and enjoy a lovely bottle of milk chocolate and orange wine. And remember, it's not Terry's, this is mine. Anyway, for now, have fun. If you try it, down in the comments below, let me know how you get on, let me know what you think. And yeah, we're going to see you again next time. So from me and James, bye bye.